Halt podcast. Let's go.
You're dealing with an expert in guerrilla warfare. With a man who's the best. With guns, with knives, with his bare hands. A man who's been trained to ignore pain, ignore weather, to live off the land. His job was to dispose of enemy personnel. To kill. Period. Win by attrition.
That's the name of the game. You gotta try to find every different way to get supported on your different platforms. That it's but what a joy it is to be a creative. I never thought of myself as being able to do this, and it just takes one person. It takes seeing one person that's positive, that's out there doing something good, that's brave enough to put themselves out there and show like, hey, you don't have to stick to the narrative. And you know, you find that one person, you're like, okay, well, maybe I can do this. And it's like, dude, it's rewarding to say the least. A lot of work, but it's fun plugging along.
There's a lot of work in the creative world. And there's so many avenues of it too, right? You know, and podcasts, man, I'll be the first to say I've got 2 podcast setups. I've got this Rode below me. I've got a Zoom set up. I don't have a podcast. And I've bought, I bought this, like the Rode. This is like the bigger Rode setup. I forget what it's called, but
the Procaster one.
Yeah. And I bought that in, man, I want to say like 2019. I was like, I'm starting a podcast.
Yeah.
And then I just never could commit myself to the time or like to getting the name, and like, or every time I did, we'd record one episode and it would be phenomenal. And then I'd be like, life got in the way. Cause I'm just so busy with all, so much, man, I'm just a mess today. Everything's falling out of my pockets.
That's what the name of the game is. Authentic and real.
Jeez, man. I've got like 2 glucose monitors just falling out everywhere. But yeah, and it's funny. So then I bought the more portable setup because I was like, you know what? I do all these backcountry film trips. We're going to start recording podcasts in the backcountry. Recorded like 2. They were phenomenal. And then I don't know what happened. I just never went anywhere with them. But thankfully, it's not like I made I didn't get them out into the world that way. People were like, well, what happened, bro? So now I just use it to be on other people's podcasts, I guess.
Well, I'm grateful for your being able to spend so much time and effort and devote the monetary funds toward great setup.
For sure. I get compliments when I join Zoom and Google Meet. So, I mean, I do got that going for me. I guess they're like, oh, you went a little over the top for this meeting. I was like, well, I bought it for a podcast. I never use it. Might as well use it for this.
Yeah, I get the same thing. I do, I also go to school, and every time I sit down and meet with an instructor or somebody that's, an academic advisor, like, oh, geez, like you've got a pro setup. And I'm like, yeah, like it's what I do. This is my thing.
For sure. Where are you based out of?
So I'm still in Northwest Florida. I retired out of 7th Group. So I stayed right here because my wife's also in the military. So she's still doing her thing. But this is our last few months. We're finally leaving the area here in a little bit.
Gotcha. One of my good buddies, he was a 7th Group guy, and he was down at dive school for years. He just moved back up to the area. He retired. But so he's somewhere in that area. He's now offering some type of like waterborne training, working with a few other guys and trying to make some money somehow in this world,
Yeah. Dude, that's like the number one stressor when guys are getting ready to make that big, bold leap. It's like, what am I going to do for money? Who's going to pay me to do things? And it's like, you can play it safe, do the contracting thing, or you can devote yourself to like just a little bit of time, a little bit of energy, and try to figure out what you're passionate about.
Yep.
And it is scary, man. Like that's one of the greatest things that you have to overcome. Like water's scary. Being on a hit is scary. Getting on a fucking airborne op is scary, but we do it. We're okay with it. And then when it comes time to retire or transition, and then it becomes like the most paralyzing fear, which is one of the things I want to talk to you today. Because when I found your profile, when I found you through the interwebs and the social media, I found somebody that was just like a lot of the guys I know. physically, you've endured a lot, you've been through so much, and nobody would have been like, hey, yeah, dude, nobody would have questioned it if you decided to play it safe and be like, you know what, I'm going to become an insurance salesman. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
This is the nice, easy game. But you carved yourself out a great space in being a creative, and you're doing something that so many of us are attracted to, but we let fear get in the way. So today,
Yeah.
Cameron Cushman, welcome to Security Out Podcast. Today we're talking about you, my man. Thank you for being here.
Man, that was a smooth intro. And that was smooth, dude. That was really smooth how you worked that. I mean, it was good. It was really good. Man, I'm stoked. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, dude. So, I mean, we can jump kind of right in. There's no like unique story to like dudes, getting messed up in service, right? Like that's it, pretty normal. Where my story is like a little bit more on the unique side is a lot of my injuries were from from an Army surgeon, right? And so this story is like way too long, and so I'll just condense it as much as I can. But like, I was a just infantry dude, 11 Charlie, and so I was in from 2010 to 2016. Spent 4 years at Fort Wainwright. 12 months of that was in Afghanistan, and then the Army broke my contract because I had re-enlisted to stay in Alaska. The Army broke that contract and sent me, of all places, to Fort Hood, Texas. Which, dude, it's so funny. No matter who I talk to, the second I mention Fort Hood, they're like, "Oh," or
Bro.
"Damn, that sucks, bro." It is a cesspool. Like
It is.
It truly is. And I don't know how they've changed the name now and everything, but like, I mean, I've met some really great people, that have been at Fort Hood, but like the majority of the place is just like, it's like where they send all the leaders that they don't want to deal with. That's where they send them, so I go to, the Army breaks that contract, and my platoon sergeant at the time was like, "Hey, the Army broke your contract and you're getting sent somewhere." And I assumed I'd be getting sent to Carson because I turned down orders to Carson to re-enlist. So I was like, it's all right, And so I come in and he's like, he prints out the orders. He's like, "Hey, you're going to Fort Hood." I was like, "Nah, for real. Where am I going?" And he was like, "Yeah, you're going to Fort Hood."
The heart starts to beat really.
Dude.
Oh God.
Right. And this was right after one of the shootings that had happened on post. It was the one where like I want to say it was like an engineer battalion or something. I think the guy's like family was like, his closest family member was like dying, and the unit denied his leave to go see her. And so he was like, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And so I think he shot 3 or 4 people. It may have been more, but I don't think so. It was like direct chain of command. And so like my wife is like, where are we going? And because I mean, like, even for her, she knew like Fort Hood wasn't a good place to be, and anyways, I get to Fort Hood, but backtrack a little bit to Afghanistan. I get super sick in country, which I feel like that's pretty common for dudes to just get a bad batch of water, dysentery, crap in their pants, throwing up on patrol. And we got it like mid fighting season. So, I mean, we're still doing like 19, 20-hour days in the summer, just dying, I seem to have some lasting issues from it. Blood in the stool, pretty consistently. And obviously like in country, the doc's like, "What do you want me to do, brother?" Like drink some more water.
Yeah.
And so, it's like 6 months later, get back to the States and it's still going on, and go to a specialist and they're like, "Hey, the good news is we didn't find anything wrong. Bad news is like, we don't know what's wrong, and so they're like, "Yeah, we don't think, like it should go away on its own." I was like, "Well, I mean, it's been like 7-8 months, and I went back another time. They found I had a really small sliding hiatal hernia, which 1 out of 3 men will develop in their lifetime. If you've got reflux, good chance you have a sliding hiatal hernia. So super common. But fast forward, and they said that shouldn't give me issues, and they didn't think that was connected. Fast forward to like, I'm now at Hood. And shortly after I've gotten there, I've got real bad reflux now. And like to the point, like if I'm doing push-ups, like it's just coming into my throat, which is just miserable. If I'm like, and Hood is mechanized. And so those vehicles are just so bumpy. And I mean, they're mechanized. I'm not a big fan of mechanized. I came from a striker unit, and if I could have had my way, I would have been a light guy, you know, like I like my feet. And so, I mean, I remember we were at NTC, and every bump in those track vehicles, it was just like reflux. And as dumb luck would have it, I took a 240 to the face at NTC and busted out like 7 teeth, all my top teeth.
Fuck.
And so like these are all fake. Like it's like one of the largest bridges they can do when like they don't like doing them that long. Knock on wood, this thing hasn't broke. But and so they send me like to the NTC, you know, like dentist office, which these, you know, like what are they gonna do?
Yeah.
And he's looking at like just the back of all my teeth. He's like, man, do you have real bad reflux? And I was like, I do. And he goes, you've got like major scarring inside your, like in your mouth and the back of your throat. He's like, you need to go like see a specialist today. He's like, and this is like a dentist. He's like, man, you could have like Barrett's esophagus, which, you know, leads to esophageal cancer. And I'm sitting here like, excuse me, sir, you know,
come again.
What did you say? And so he sends, whatever to try to send me immediately back to Hood, and my unit denied it. Which is really funny. That whole, this just shows the Hood story. I was on the Advon flight to NTC. So the first in the unit, because my wife was pregnant. So I was supposed to come back sooner anyways.
Yeah.
They thought I broke my teeth on my own or something, because I was the last guy in the unit to leave NTC. Wow. I was the first to show up, you know, like, this is where my hatred towards Fort Hood really started, you know, like I was about ready to go to the 6th board in 5 years, man. Like I'm not a dirtbag by any means, you know? And so anyways, I get back, I go see this specialist, and he's like, yeah, you know, let's try you on every medication. So like throw me on all these different medications, and responded to none of them. They're running all these different like tests, and you know, they've done a bunch of upper endoscopies. Like, yeah, your sliding hiatal hernia is huge. You know, it's the sphincter between the top of your stomach and the bottom of your esophagus is wide open. And so he's like, you know, we got to do a surgery. And so he sends me to, you know, one of the general surgeons at Hood. And so she's like, you know, we're going to do what's called the Nissen fundoplication. It's where they remove the hernia. They take your upper stomach and wrap it around your lower esophagus, and then like tighten it. Oh, it's so funny how like cameras do. You ever notice this thing?
Yeah.
Dude, we're break topic real quick. The other day I was talking to somebody about we were talking about like veteran suicide. It was a very serious conversation, and fucking balloons.
The balloons pop up.
Dude, I want to know how these platforms decide what. I know, like, I guess if you do, maybe my hand went like this, and so the thumbs up makes sense. But why were balloons flying up?
Firecrackers,
dude. Fireworks. And we're sitting here talking about something serious, and balloons come up. And I remember she was like, "Were those just balloons?" And I was like,
"I didn't do that."
So, and I didn't do it. I promise you. She probably thought I did, like mocking her. I don't know, but anyways,
thank you, AI.
And so, right, and so we go in for the first surgery. So when she's in there, she finds my issue, and this is what the big issue had been for most likely the blood and the stool, was I not only had that sliding hiatal, I had a secondary paraesophageal hernia, which is like a more rare hernia, very hard to diagnose, harder to find, because they can be on the outside of the stomach. And so mine was on the outside. So unless you're cutting, or it's so bad that you see it, you know, twisting the stomach from a scope, you wouldn't know it was there. And so when she was obviously cutting inside, she found it. And so basically what happens with a paraesophageal hernia is over time, it grabs your stomach and it'll twist it to death, essentially.
Oh.
And so she removes both the hernias. I wake up super nauseous. So whatever anesthetic they put me on made me really sick. And so I'm like retching right after this surgery. And so they don't really emphasize that with Nissens, like, you never can throw up again. So I never can throw up again, which is fucking miserable. A lot of people are like, that's epic. I'm like, no, bro, if you're sick and you can't throw up, that is not fun, you know? And so I had a retching episode, right away. And like, I remember like calling the nurses in for like, I needed, nausea medication into my IV, and they're like yelling at me for like retching. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, it's my fault, you know? And so, about a week later, I noticed I was having some difficulty breathing. And so I went back to the surgeon. I said, hey, something's wrong. Like, I feel like I'm choking, but I'm not choking. And so I hadn't even started to eat yet. I was still on a liquid diet. So like, I was just on water, and like, I think I just started like Ensure shakes or something like that. Cause you have to like relearn how to eat basically with the Nissen.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, it's PTSD from the surgery. And I was like, ma'am, what do you mean? What is that? You know, and
the words you're using, I don't think you know what they mean.
Right. And I was like, why would I have it from a surgery? You know, like, now it makes sense if I had it now from what she did the next surgery. But so anyways, like, I went in there every few days, like, ma'am, I cannot breathe. And I mean, to the point where I was hearing my chest like sucking, like my chest would literally have that high pitched wheeze, you know, like what a sucking chest wound sounds like, you know. And I think it's like almost a month later, maybe just over a month. And I go in there, I was like, you need to give me a barium swallow. And I had been asking for this. And if you've ever had a barium, or anybody who's had a barium, that's not something you ask for like willingly. A barium swallow is like the best way to describe: buy a bunch of chalk, put it in a blender, and then add a little bit of water to it, and then drink it. You know, like, it's this just like thick clay nastiness, and then you drink it with like pop rocks too, that like make everything fizzle. It's not fun. And so I'm begging for a barium. Like, that should tell you, just give me the damn thing. Like, this isn't costing the army anything. So she's like, whatever, go to radiology right now. They'll do the barium. So I go over there and I take the first sip, because they're doing like a live x-ray basically as you take it. And they take it when you're standing, laying, like in different positions. And this x-ray tech just starts laughing. And he's like, you should see the size of this hernia crushing your lung right now. And so shit. I was like, in a way I'm laughing, because I was like, good talk, doc. I was right, you know? And so what had happened was, the surgery, they blamed my retching on the surgery failing. My third surgeon would go on to say that was bullshit, that it was a sole complacency on her behalf, that she didn't do a good job, because all surgeries like of that should expect you to retch at some point within the first few weeks. And so what had happened was the paraesophageal hernia, that more dangerous, rare one, had came back, had completely like encapsulated the surgical site, and was like twisting it and just pushing on my lung. And so she schedules like an emergency upper endoscopy for the next day. And so I come in, we do the EGD, it butterflies. So butterflies, like when the camera goes down and it can't pass a certain point, and it basically hits something and turns back up. So it butterflied when it hit the surgical site. And because I had only been drinking water, and as slow as I was, I didn't notice, because it would seep through like the cracks into my stomach when it could. And so the next day, they obviously do an emergency surgery. And so we go in there, and it's the same surgeon. And so this time around, they're like, hey, we're going to hit you with an anesthetic that has no history of nausea, but it's very like painful. Who says that? Like, just maybe don't tell me that. Because I'm never gonna forget this. Like, I mean, dude, there was like 4 like anesthesiologists in the room, like 5 nurses in the room. Like, I'm just like, I'm dying, clearly, you know, and I mean, like, they're like, hopefully we're gonna hit you with like the normal anesthesia that you get when you get like your wisdom teeth out, like the one that most people would fall asleep to. At this point, I'm on like my 7th or 8th, you know, EGD in a few months, so I have a high tolerance to anesthesia, and so, you know, like when you're put under, it's like the nurse is always like, "How you feeling?" You know, like right when they hit you with it, and I'm every time, dude, I'm like wide awake, you know, and
I'm still here, bitch.
And so, right, and so they hit me, you know, with this, and I'm like, "Yeah, dude, I'm wide awake," and they're like, "All right, what kind of music do you want to listen to?" They're like, "You need to pick something that's going to put you in a good place." And I'm just saying, like, what are you guys doing to me? You know, and I mean, I picked the Beach Boys. I don't remember what song, but I picked the Beach Boys. And man, I think that may have made it worse. And listen, I've never done like acid or anything, but I'm pretty sure the feeling that I felt would probably be equivalent to acid. They may have gave me acid for all I know, because when they hit me with this anesthetic, the doctor even again was like, "Listen, it's gonna be painful." I'm just like, "What does that mean?" And dude, the best way I could describe it was like a bunch of elephants standing on me.
Oh,
as I fell like hundreds of feet, and dude, like I felt like it felt like that for like 30 minutes. Like it probably was like 5 seconds before I fell asleep, but it felt like 30 minutes, and just like this weight just crushing on me, like everything was like pressurized. And I mean, like things are like, I'm seeing weird shit, and the Beach Boys music is sounding real trippy at that point. And so I wake up from the surgery, and she's like, "It went so well." And so, you know, I believed her.
Mission accomplished.
Right. And then, so this time around, my body was not responding well to eating again, like to liquid. So I remember trying to drink water and like having this excruciating chest pain, which was later diagnosed as esophageal spasm. So essentially, like something she nicked or touched causes my esophagus to spasm. And like the best way to describe it is like something enters the esophagus, it doesn't like it, and it squeezes below it and on top of it, trying to reject it one way or the other. And so if it's squeezing it together, it's pounding on it, and it's putting this like massive pressure. And for like those who have experienced esophageal spasms, like they can attest to this. Like the best way to describe it, and this is what my doctors have said, is like the sensation of a heart attack.
Holy cow.
Because I mean, like pain just shoots through an arm, and so they've told me like, "Oh, you won't know the difference when you're older." Like, oh, cool. I guess, you know,
nice.
And
got that to look forward to.
And so I couldn't drink water. And so I didn't, from July, like 15th or whenever my second surgery was, to I think towards the end of August, I had no water at all. I was drinking Gatorade, and that, because the Gatorade for some reason would go, ended up in the hospital for like vitamin A toxicity and, you know, dehydration. No. And so finally, like, had to like drink water and learn how. And I mean, dude, at this point, like I'm from like 190 to like 148 pounds. And we still haven't realized like the major damage that has been caused yet, because I haven't eaten food. Yeah. And so I mentally learned how to block out this esophageal spasm, right? Because it was so like depressing. I mean, I went from like, you know, I like food, everyone likes food, to not being able to eat. And like, you don't realize after a few weeks of your mouth not like chewing, your body starts to like be like, something's weird here, you know? And dude, it got to the point like it was affecting my family. Like my wife didn't want to eat in front of me. And like, so if we were out traveling to like a doctor's appointment and it was lunchtime, like she wouldn't eat. And so I remember one day we stopped at a Subway, and I was like, "Order me a sub." And she was like, "Babe, you can't eat it." And I was like, just order me a sub. And so she bought me a sub. I kid you not, man. This is like so depressing. I remember like crying when I was doing this. I would chew the sub and spit it out just for the sense of like remembering what it was like to eat, you know? And so eventually, like a few weeks later, I learned how to block the spasms and I started eating. And I was eating, like, you start slow, like on like mashed potatoes or rice, something that is not gonna, like, I couldn't eat steak, obviously, something that would be hard. And I remember the first time, I think my first meal was mashed potatoes, and I was so nauseous. Like, I looked like I was 6 months pregnant for hours and hours, like felt like I was dying. Like something was wrong with my stomach. I was so bloated, like, and so this was happening every time I ate. And so I went back to her. I was like, something's wrong. And she was like, you just need to go you need to go back to your doctor. I'm not dealing with this anymore. And so they said, I go back to my gastroenterologist. He's like, we're just going to send you to BAMC to figure out what's wrong, because, you know, this is out of my, I don't know what you're dealing with. And I didn't even run any tests. So I go to BAMC and I go for my first upper endoscopy there. And, you know, like a EGD, like you're not supposed to eat after, you know, like 11 or 8 or whatever time they say. It always seems to be different. I've got one next week and they said not after 11. For me, though, I know I can't eat for longer than that. But I go for this EGD and I wake up and I'm getting yelled at. Like, as I'm coming off of this anesthesia, like, what? You know, and they're like, we told you not to eat. You realize what could happen if, you know, if we accidentally, you know, punctured something and food got into your body. And I'm like, I haven't eaten in 5 days. And they're like, what is this? And they're showing up like a photo of mashed potatoes. And I was like, I ate those mashed potatoes last like Thursday. And this is like a Tuesday or something. And they're like, you're a liar. And dude, so they're like, you're coming back tomorrow. And so I don't eat anything. And I wake up again. Something's wrong with you. The mashed potatoes are still there. And I'm like, yeah, something's clearly wrong. And so now we're like, all right, what the fuck? And so they do a few like pressure tests to see if there's a pressure imbalance, like, which is this miserable little tiny tube they stick down. It's almost like an NG tube. It's really small. They stick it down your nose and it like measures the pressure. You can like feel it. And it's very uncomfortable. They do it when you're awake. And so my pressure was slightly off, not like crazy off, but it was slightly off. And so they're like, all right, we need to just do some more tests. And so this is the test that determined everything. They send me for like the egg test. And so you essentially eat a radioactive egg and bread. And so you eat this and you have to eat it in under 2 minutes, which for me is very challenging with the esophageal spasms. Like I don't think I did. I think I ate it in like 9 minutes. Or I know I ate it like triple the time that you're allowed. And so then they do like an X-ray. I think they may have changed it. When I did it, they did an X-ray every 15 minutes for the first hour, and then every 30 minutes for the next 3 hours. So it was a total of 4 hours of X-rays to see what is your stomach emptying. The normal person at 4 hours would have like, 99% of the food would be emptied, you know? I think I was at like a 1% empty rate. Shit. And so they diagnosed me right then with gastroparesis. And gastroparesis, like the term seems to change a lot, but it's like delayed stomach emptying or paralyzed stomach. And so at this point, all my medical stuff is down at BAMC. So I'm just driving the 3 hours to BAMC like every other day from Hood. And they're, like, listen, you've got gastroparesis. This most likely was caused by that surgeon severing your vagus nerve, which is just gastroparesis. Huge. Yeah. I mean, gastroparesis typically affects women and it's normally idiopathic. So no known cause. Some other like bigger causes of it is diabetes can cause it. And then the rest are all nerve related. So the vagus nerve typically is the one getting nicked. And so they finally like, I mean, at this point, dude, I'm like on like upper endoscopy, like 20. I'm addicted to anesthesia. Like if that's a thing, like if I walk to this day, if I walk into a hospital, I can taste it in the air, like because I had been put under so many times, like that sensation, like I was craving that, like, cause it was the only time that brought me like a sense of peace, like of no pain. And cause I'm so nauseous. I'm nauseous 24/7. I'm in pain 24/7. Because the stomach's not emptying, and so your body's bloating, basically. But for me, most gastroparesis people throw up. They can't keep anything down. I physically can't throw up, and so my body is just like I'm hitting as I'm trying to throw up, like the surgical site. Now my body knows, hey, you can't throw up, and so it'll just try to push it the other way. Unless I have a stomach flu, I'll try to throw up, but which is not fun. So they finally sent me to a third surgeon who's a Mayo Clinic guy who's in the Air Force. And so this is a dude who only does like specialty cases, people that are really messed up or like on their 5th, 6th, 7th surgeries. Like, why didn't you do me first, bro? And
can we just get rid of the butcher and go straight to the professional?
Right. And so I go in for this surgery, and this is my 3rd surgery now, and this is January of 2016. At this point, the Army hasn't found me unfit for duty. I haven't been to formation in months, or anything. My unit had deployed to Korea. So the rear D didn't care. I was the dirtbag because I didn't deploy to Korea because I got a surgeon screwed me, which is, part of me gets that infantry mentality. If you can't fight, what good are you? But you didn't have to be so unsupportive about it and make me the bad guy, Yeah. So I built a big resentment towards the military at first. So going for the 3rd surgery, and basically, hey, we don't know what we're doing. We're doing 1 of 3 surgeries. We're taking down everything she's done, in hopes that maybe the hernias won't come back and we can bring you to a normal level. If you have, maybe at this point your sphincter has refixed itself, even though it hadn't been very long, or the second option, go in, take down everything she did, redo it correctly. Nothing is going to change the fact that my stomach's now paralyzed, but they're trying to figure out ways to give me some relief.
Yeah.
And then the third option is to do a pyloroplasty, which was the last resort. Pyloroplasty is basically where you open the bottom of the stomach. So you take the sphincter between the stomach and the upper intestines and you just open it. And so then food dumps down faster. So you get what's called dumping syndrome. Which kind of is what it sounds like. Like you go to the bathroom right after eating, but the real reason behind it is when your body flushes out food quicker, if it's not broken down, your intestines will actually dump all of your nutrients. And so you become severely hypoglycemic from it. So I've already become hypoglycemic, obviously, because of just the amount of damage and not eating properly. And so we go in, to do the surgery. I wake up and, the surgeon's like, hey man, we had to do the pyloroplasty. I know it's not what we wanted. But he's like, I couldn't touch the Nissen. He's like, I've never seen so much scar tissue in somebody your age and your build in my career. And he described it. He's like, dude, if I could describe it, you look like you're on your 5th or 6th gastric bypass. You weigh 700 pounds and somebody just took a scalpel in there and was just trying to chop shit up. And so, man, sure as shit, the pyloroplasty caused severe hypoglycemia, to the point where I was dropping down into the 20s and 30s, 5, 6, 7, 8 times a day. And I mean, for those who don't know, anything below 70 is hypoglycemic. Anything below 50, you're at risk of brain damage, a coma, seizure, death. You died 0 pretty much. And I was hitting 20s and 30s. And so I don't remember a lot of the end of the career. I don't really remember a lot of 2016 to begin with, but I was dropping down there. I had a seizure when I was home alone at one point. Thankfully, managed to grab Gatorade that was around my bed. And yeah. And so obviously now I've been found unfit for duty, go through the retirement, process and the VA process, and my VA appointment, the I get a PA, man. Like I don't even get a doctor. I don't get a specialist. And my situation is all unique, you know, and she's eating spaghetti in front of me. I'm eating baby food at the time. Like she's eating during my review, like, which is not allowed.
Yeah.
It's not allowed. Looked it up. And she reads my first claim, which, mind you, none of these claims I did. These are put in by the doctors, you know, like the Army doctors. It is documented. Army surgeon severed vagus nerve.
Yeah.
And so gastroparesis is the first thing. And she goes, gastroparesis, and giggles. She goes, don't you mean gastritis? At that moment, I was like, oh, the VA is what everyone says it is.
Yep.
And I was like, man, I wish I had gastritis again. I was like, I wish I had reflux. And I was like, I have gastroparesis. She's like, that's not a word. And I was like, you have a monitor in front of you. You can feel free to Google it if you'd like, because the doctor's notes right there say it's gastroparesis. And she legit denied it. And they gave me some weird rating for my stomach thing, like some made up bullshit.
Get the fuck out of here.
Dude, denied every rating I claimed besides tinnitus, gave me the 10%. They gave me ratings for everything I claimed, but in these weird things that were easily to take away. So like at this point I had been diagnosed with like severe depression, obviously. But depression, this is like good information for those who may be going through the process. If you're, especially if you are diagnosed with depression and it's actually PTSD, depression can be taken away from you. So you could have a 70% rating for depression, and then all your other ratings are, you know, great. So you may be at 100%, and then you go to a doctor's appointment 6 months later, and they ask one simple question, and you are like, oh, I'm doing all right. Yep. Depression is healable, is curable, and so. That's they get you with depression.
Yeah. And PTSD, because they will reevaluate you.
Yeah.
Because it's something that it stabilizes.
Yes.
So, And a quick segue. If you are being treated, don't walk away from your treatment. Don't stop taking your medication. And I say that because you are going to go through a reevaluation period.
Yeah.
Don't walk in there and say, I am at 100%. Everything is better, because they will quickly say, okay, excellent. Now we're going to drop you down to this.
Yeah. And here's to segue on that. This is where like veterans will struggle with this, right? Like, so for me, I'm at 8 fucking years of living with a paralyzed stomach, of being nauseous 24/7, of being told I'd never do it. For the first few years, being told I'd never do anything again. There's only so much of that I could fucking stand.
Yeah.
And so I now just push through everything, right? Like I've built up this massive tolerance to pain, to nausea, and I do what I do to show my family and everyone and myself really, and the doctors like, fuck you. I can't do hard things.
Yeah.
And
we're meant like, to do hard things. That's the thing.
Exactly.
Our culture and our society right now have told us, and not just veterans, especially veterans, but everybody now it's seek comfort.
Yeah.
Forsake everything and just stick with comfort. It's like, no, shit's going to be painful. I was almost fucking fell victim to it. All of us do, because if you can just take a pill for it, just take a pill for it. Fuck working hard. Fuck going and doing what you can do. There's, no matter what you're going through, there's something you can do to take control of your life.
100%. But that's, you know, what you were saying, that's the problem, is like, say it, like, I'll use me for example. I've been dealing with this for so much longer. Everyone's like, dude, you seem like you're doing a lot better mentally. Yeah. Like, I've learned how to tolerate it better, but that does not mean I'm better. And so like, but that's, so like a guy may go in, they're like, how you doing it? And it may be 5 years of you dealing with PTSD or whatever. And you're like, yeah, you know, I'm doing. And they're like, oh, so you're not fucked anymore. And so, but that's not the case. You have just built up this tolerance, and you know, some people may argue like, well, that means you're better. No, it doesn't. It means you just are not going to deal with the bullshit and go down this negative fucking rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And so, you know, they came back, my initial rating came back at 80, and a lot of people are like, man, you should be stoked. And I was like, the doctors are telling me I'm never working again. I live on my bed or my couch. And I was like, I barely can get off the bed. And so, dude, it was my daughter asking me to go to the park every day. And I've told this story a million times, but she was like 2.5 every day. Can we go to the park every day? I'd say no. One day she didn't ask me. And that was the day I was like, oh, I'm a piece of shit. I wasn't a piece of shit, but I felt like that, you know? And so me and my wife, man, had a long, hard conversation. I need to find peace.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go back to doing what I loved. I'm going to get back into the outdoors. There's a likelihood I die on a mountain somewhere. But I showed my kids that I wasn't going to let some disease and all these injuries control my life. And so my wife agreed. And that was a hard road getting to there because I'd pass out on the water. I'd be with friends at least, and they were there to, you know, shoot like cookie icing into my mouth. Because my hypoglycemia is like the real immediate like killer, right? Like where I could die quicker is from, you know, that. So we petitioned it, and the VA was like, we have great faith and trust in our appointed officials and whatever. So got out at the 80. My wife now is working like 3 jobs, and she was a stay-at-home mom, man. Like we had 3 kids at the time. So she's now working to try to figure out, hey, how are we going to live? And we go back to Florida. And at this point I was like, man, I need to make money. Like the 80%, 80% is like, people don't realize, like, unless you're 100, you can't support a family. Like the jump from 90 to 100 is thousands and thousands of dollars. And even 100%, nobody can survive on 100% disability.
Nope.
I don't care unless you have no kids and you eat ramen noodles every day, and then you're just going to die from microplastics. But, so I go to school, which again, you're never going to go to school. You're never going to be able to do this. You need a feeding tube. You need a permanent TPM. You need a pacemaker. And I denied every one of those things. Was it smart? I'll learn in the future probably. But I chose the harder route that I knew would make me tougher and that would show the kids like we can do hard shit. And so went to school, man. I maintained a 4.0 GPA the entire time. Was it easy? Nope. And then the school shut down the quarter before I was set to graduate.
Fuck.
And so it was all for nothing because no other school would accept their accreditation.
No.
It was a certain art school, and a lot of art schools have a different accreditation that they're the balloons.
They're balloons.
They're the fucking balloons.
There it is.
What did I do? I don't I want to recreate it. How? Come on.
It's the gestures.
Jeez, man. And so, so the school closes. And I was going for filmmaking because I had a background. I guess this is important. I had a background in photography before I joined.
Mm-hmm.
And then towards the end of my career, I was like, I kind of want to learn video. And so I started messing with video stuff and just really something that I enjoyed that would make me happy. Because I knew I'd really struggle working full time, at least at the time. Like I don't think I could have done 40 hours a week due to the pain and nausea. And so I knew if I can do a photo shoot here or there, a video shoot for a few hours or a day, and I'd probably be fine. And so, man, I just was grinding, dude. I was doing so many passion projects, like just going out and shooting cool shit on like my own dollar I didn't really have. But I was just trying to shoot stuff that was pretty, stuff that was cool, that told a story. And me and a good buddy of mine I met at school, a good buddy Marcos, who everyone thinks is a vet. It's really funny because he's not. He's just from Venezuela. So I guess Venezuelans have a similar culture as veterans do. But
you know, they've been through some shit.
Yeah, for sure. And so we go on this 8,000-mile trip, legit 7,992 miles from start to finish, from Florida to California and back, fly fishing. So fly fishing the outdoors is like where my healing is. And I preach this all the time. I've been involved with a few veteran nonprofits that get dudes out either as a board member or advisor. But the outdoors have so much power. And so we do this trip. We make this short film. It's like 2 minutes and 30 seconds called Chasing Natives. This could have been a full-length doc. I don't know why we didn't do one, but I narrated it. I look back at it now. I hate it. Typical creative. I actually hate things I create like a day ago.
I don't listen to any of my podcasts. They're just out there.
And so that film, which was like all out of pocket. I had a Dodge Journey at the time. We slept in the Dodge Journey the entire time, minus 2 nights in a hotel, and it was 19 days total.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, like, we went through every ounce of clothing. We were reusing socks. So we would roll up our socks in the rear window. And so mind you, like the socks started like this long. And then by the end of the trip, they're like this long because they were dangling out the window as we're doing 80 miles an hour drying, and so we slept at one night in Vegas. We slept at the Bellagio. We're like, let's treat ourselves. And I think Marcos paid for that because I didn't have no money. And this short film, man, like right after I released it, I started getting phone calls like, hey, we'd like to hire you to do a film. And man, next thing I know, I get a phone call from a magazine and they're like, we'd like you to produce a TV show for the Outdoor Channel and the Sportsman's Channel.
No way.
And I was like, at the time, I think my longest video ever had been like 4 minutes. And I was like, yeah, I've never done it, but let's do it. So I did a season, every episode's 22 minutes long, which that's how long all 30-minute shows are with commercials. And dude, super good learning experience, made a really good chunk of money. I got to, lead a team of people under me. Like I covered all the budgeting, the travel, the logistics, and everything. I learned so much from doing that show, and it all came from doing those like passion projects.
Yeah.
And then COVID happened like mid-show. And the outdoor industry at the time didn't realize that 2021 would be its biggest year ever. So this is 2020 when this happened. And so all the sponsors pull out for the next season. Yeah. So the show is canceled. I'll be the first to say me and the wife and family went from not making a lot of money to a lot of money with the show. And so like we were kind of living a little bougie of a life. We're living East Coast Florida, like we're going for walks every day. We're going to eat it. Like I think we ate out for lunch every day, and we had the money, but the problem was I put every fucking egg in one basket, all in the show. And so when the world changed and everything, the show was gone, we had a good amount in savings, and I had my disability, and that savings was just like, and then it was like gone. And so all my clients have dropped now, all the small ones, everyone's pulling back. And so I was like, I need to find a full-time job. Dude, I'm applying to jobs that have 4,000 or 5,000 applicants in the first 12 hours because everyone in Hollywood they're more shut down than anybody. And so I'm competing with people who have Emmys for jobs for like a trailer company, like somewhere you would never guess. Like, and so nothing, dude. I'm making it through the process. They love me. And then some Emmy winner comes in. And it's like, oh, well, I got an Emmy. Why wouldn't you hire me?
It's the guy from Breaking Bad. Of course we'll take him.
Right. And so I remember I was at the beach with the family and I get a message on Instagram, and it's this guy he's got like no following. I thought it was a spam. And he's like, hey man, I'm a visual manager for a company in Missouri. Would you be interested in hearing about a job we have? And I laughed because I had only been in Missouri once, and I drove through it in the end of July, and I was like, this place is hotter than fucking Florida. And who would ever live here? I said it. I could find you the video right now of me at the rest stop holding my son saying, who would live in this state? It would come to bite me in the ass that I would spend a night at that goddamn rest stop when I moved there a year later.
That just shows you God has humor.
Yes. And so, man, we got on the phone. I said right off the bat, because I'm forward, I was like, what's the salary? And he told me. I laughed. And he was like, I'm assuming that's too low. And I was like, that's about 70 grand too low. And so he's like, all right, well, I appreciate your time. And I was like, yeah, man, good luck, dude. And so it's like 5 minutes later, I get a phone call from a Missouri number, and it's their HR team. They're like, hey, we really love what you do. What's it going to take? And so I was like, I need a day. And so, I talked to my wife, and we're like, we got no money. Maybe it's not smart to turn down this, and so we negotiate to a number that is livable.
Yeah.
Nowhere near what I made, and for now I'm working way more, obviously. This is like my first role in the corporate world, 40 hours a week. And, So I go and work for this company for about 2 years. I was one of the senior visual producers, and then moved to a supervisor, led a team of like 5 graphic designers and visuals in there. Awesome experience. Did a lot of networking, which is so important for a creative. Left there for a job with one of the largest egg companies. As funny as this is, I won't say who it is, but one of the largest egg companies, who their primary thing is marketing. I mean, we had big budgets and tripled my salary, remote, unlimited PTO, just a, great deal. It was not a great fit by any means. I was a hard charger, wanted to get shit done. They wanted me more in the role just to sit back, which was not what they hired me to do. And so it didn't work out, left there. And now I'm looking again, right? So we're already in Missouri. We own a property. I'm not too concerned about like finding a job right away. I've got such a network. I was getting job offers all the time. They weren't what I wanted. And so I had a job interview with a company in Montana, and I was like, man, this is it. And we're looking at, this is before the freaking housing market jumped like crazy out here. But I was like, I don't think we're ready for a move yet. And so my wife was like, go freelance again, work for yourself. That's what's best. Sent out like 3 emails to some companies that I had been chatting with. I said, hey, I want to work with y'all. I want you to be one of my clients. Guy says, I'll give you 50 grand for a year contract. And this is the expectation. And I was like, done. And so it was, a few minutes worth of work a day. And then a shoot here and there, every 2 weeks. And so, man, I just started locking in contracts, dude. And it all came down to networking and putting myself out there, which is such a huge thing. And then last summer, during all this time, I do a lot of stuff with veteran nonprofits. Yep. I guess that should be a big part of this conversation. I'd been the chief marketing officer for a nonprofit called the Iron Freedom Foundation for about 4 years until I stepped down last year. Which got vets into the outdoors through fly fishing and kayak programs, 3 to 7 day expeditions. So I was with them, stepped down last year. And then really just last year is when I started diving into a lot of my work was with veteran owned businesses or veteran nonprofits. So I got to work with Stop Soldier Suicide last year, Semperfi America's Fund, Project Healing Waters, and a bunch of other smaller ones. Yeah. And then I donate at least two films a year to a small nonprofit where I can help them that, there is no budget. Maybe they cover my travel. Sometimes they don't, but if I have the ability to give back, I'm going to. And so I came out here to Montana for a trip to film with Two Wolf Foundation, Brian Flynn, Fifth Group guy, founder. And I came down into the valley right around June 1st, and it was cloudy. You couldn't see mountains, but something was the air, and I was like, this is where I need to live. Yeah. So I remember calling my wife, we're moving to Montana next week. And she was like, oh yeah, nice try. And so I was like, all right, 1 year. And she's like, we'll talk about it, and then so finally the trip, as I'm here, the trip's going on. I'm like, babe, this is it, dude. This is where we need to be. And she's like, let's set a realistic goal. I was like, all right, 3 years, June 1st of whatever. So that would be 2026. And so then I get back. I was like, babe, we need to be here sooner. And and so I bring her out here for our anniversary. And so she falls in love the second or third day we're out here. She's like, all right, let's set a goal for 1 June of 2024. And I'm like, done. So the goal was we will live in the Bitterroot Valley on 1 June of 2024. Get back to the house. I came back out here for some more work. And every time I come back out here, I'm like, man, I need to live here. And a house pops up on, Realtor or whatever for rent. And I was like, babe, this is it. And so I reached out and I was like, hey, listen, I need it. And she was like, she fell in love with me over the phone. And so it was like, we can move in October 1st. And my wife was like, listen, you're the leader of this house, your call. And so I was like, yeah, we'll take it.
Yeah.
And so we moved out here October 1st. And this is when it was really a seller's market, but the interest rates skyrocketed. And so this is where we're getting screwed currently. Our house in Missouri is not selling.
Yeah.
And we've dropped the price like 70 grand. And so we're paying for a mortgage and a rental. And a rental in Montana is not the cheapest.
Yeah.
And so we're hurting there. But from a mental standpoint, like this was the best decision we ever could have made as a family. Like seeing my kids get outside more. I found running, like I never thought I'd run again. I was told I'd never run again. I was told I'd never do all these physical things again, dude. And I filmed the Marine Corps Marathon back out in October. And watching just like every different type of person cross that finish line. I was like, fuck,
dude,
it's emotional.
It's amazing what they will tell us you can't do again after you go through like surgeries, after you go through treatment. Hey, you can't do this. You have to limit this. You won't be able to do this anymore. You're going to be refined to this state. Like, and many veterans take that as the gospel, as the 100%. Word. And I'm telling you, man, there's a power to starting off doing what you can with what you can do. Like start off with just a few push-ups a day. There's so many veterans that are so bitter, so out of shape, so broken. And it's just like, oh, they're telling me I am completely broken. I can't be like, dude, no, there is something. You can start somewhere. Like a walk, fucking something as powerful as a walk, dude. Like I was there.
100%.
They're like, hey, you've got way too much damage in your feet. You're not going to be able to do long distance running. And then you just say, okay, well then I'll never run again. It's like, okay. Or you start walking and maybe you start rowing and maybe you start biking and maybe you start pushing the boundaries. It's going to suck. I remember the first time I went out and started running, my feet instantly swelled the fuck up. And I'm like, wow, this is really stupid. And I went back to like having to like brace myself against the walls. But you know what? Hey, swelling goes down. You maybe try a little bit more, get different shoes, try something.
Yeah.
Like you can do something. If you're listening and you're in a chronic back pain, so one thing that I always like, I hear from guys, well, my back's fucked up. Well, it's going to get worse if you just sit there. If you just stay stagnant.
Go to a chiropractor.
Yeah. Do something. Be willing to challenge yourself, man.
Yeah. Yeah. The more, like, it's kind of funny, like, especially like infantry, all your combat dudes, like have that like, if you don't lose it to the doctor's voices in your head that like, I'll push through the pain. And there's like a level of that, which like helps us. And then there's a level of that that's not safe. Like when my foot is injured and I keep running. But like I have a good balance between the two, man. And I went from having ran maybe 3 miles total in the past 8 years, right? Or maybe 9 years, 3 miles total, to going to the marathon, coming back and being like, how do I do this? Where do I start?
Nice.
And I started running in November of this past year. I ran for like 2 weeks. And, typical, like somebody who's trying to do harder shit, I decided to run in barefoot shoes. And so if you never use barefoot shoes, they use muscles that you probably haven't touched or used ever. And so my first run's 4 miles in barefoot shoes. I couldn't walk for a week and a half. My legs were so tight. But anyways, so I started rotating. I'm like, all right, maybe take it easy, rotate between, conventional shoes and being free, right? I'm always trying to find a way more to connect to earth. And so that was a big reason for why I went the barefoot route. And I think it's like my third or fourth run. The next day I woke up, I had popped a rib out of place. I thought it was a pinched nerve. I literally popped one of my upper ribs out. So I thought I made a post about it. And a chiropractor was like, who followed me. He's like, dude, come on up to Missoula. I'll take care of you. And so I drive up there, coolest dude on earth. He's like, it's your rib. And I was like, bullshit. and it's a pinched nerve in my neck. Yeah. And dude, it was my fucking rib. Yeah. The x-ray showed it out of place. And dude, looking at my imagery of my neck, how fucked the compressed is, like from like carrying mortar tubes on my back, like my spine. And I'm like sitting there, like trying not to like, what do you mean that's my back? And dude, I'm like all crooked and shit. And he's like, I see this with so many like combat dudes or, just like, more of the guys that are carrying more weight. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to see that. he was like, how do you have no pain in your neck? And I was like, I thought that was normal.
Yeah.
And so he pops it back in. So there was like a 3-week period of no running. And so I hit December pretty hard. I ran almost every day of December. And then I told myself, it wasn't a New Year's resolution or anything. I said, you know what? I'm going to run or do at least some form of cardio every single day of January, at least 1 mile of cardio in January. We're at January 26th, and I've ran 82.3 miles
Holy
as
shit.
of yesterday.
Damn, dude.
It has changed my life, bro. Every run minus one run I've hit a runner's high almost every run, like in this euphoric, peaceful state where like I just feel phenomenal. And because I developed real bad anxiety last year out of nowhere. There's no cause to it. It could have to do with my vagal nerve damage.
Mm-hmm.
And the anxiety was like ruining my life. Like I worked around it. The meds they gave me like made it worse. So, and I try to do things as natural as I can anyways. The running was helping me a lot. Getting outdoors was still helping me, but like, it was just starting to get kind of crazy. And, but I contribute the running to helping me. And then I finally went to a nonprofit last week, the first I've ever been to, which is weird for me because I normally help nonprofits. 22-0, and it's ran by Dan Jarvis, dude.
Yeah, Dr. Pamela Arnell.
Yes, bro. My anxiety is gone.
Yeah, dude, 22-0, man. I
what the fuck?
I love their approach. I love everything about what they do, their mission. I have referred people to them because for a lot of us, we don't want to talk about the event.
Right.
We don't want to relive it. And what they have is something that is absolutely amazing and so beneficial to so many people. Man, great people. I've had her on the show. We actually got to meet in person. I got to go back to my old alma mater in 7th group and speak on mental health, and she was there. Amazing people. Shout out to 22-0. If you need help, if you're dealing with something, check them out. Obviously, we approve of them. Man, that is amazing. I am so glad you connected with them.
And it's crazy because the process is like very simple when you think about it. And I remember like right afterwards, the coach that I worked with, she was like, "How you feeling right now?" And I was like, "I feel kind of weird. Like my head feels light." And then she's like, "You may crash, you may sleep really well tonight." Mind you, dude, like my average deep sleep, like according to my watch for years has been like 32 to 50 minutes of deep sleep. Like that's not enough.
No, not at all, dude.
and so like, that's my normal, dude. That night I wake up and my watch says I got 2 hours and 22 minutes of deep sleep. And I was like, there's no way. This is witchcraft. The next day, 2 hours. The next day, 1 hour and 57. The next day, 2 hours and 57 minutes of deep sleep. And I'm just sitting there like, what do you like?
Yeah.
And I'm looking for my anxiety. Like I'm looking for it. Like there was like several things that it should have caused it and they weren't. And I started feeling what like a normal anxiety would be for somebody who doesn't have like, chronic anxiety. Like my glucose was going off on my sensor. And I felt this like panic that I hadn't felt in so long. And it's not like a bad panic. It's like, hey, bro, grab a Gatorade. You may need to drink something. Your glucose is dropping. Not that this is the time I die, which is like, what I had faced in the past year. And I mean, dude, like I've been less quick to anger. I'm sleeping better. Like what they've got going on is real special, dude.
Yeah.
Really special.
I love sending Green Berets to them. They do some great stuff.
100%.
And it's the thing that's like, I lean into mindfulness and meditation. That's what's helped me with my anxiety. But one of the key things that you're able to tap into is the vagus nerve, which you don't have access to anymore. Which is like, and you're able to still, and that's the beauty of the body. Like, no matter what you're dealing with, there's an approach to overcome your anxiety. You have to be willing to fight for it.
And so that's what's really funny for me. And so, all right, average person has a panic attack, right? If you have a watch on that has a heart rate, monitor, you're probably going to be in the, above 100, 120. You're going to be like in a workout. You're going to be panting. Like if I have a panic attack, my heart rate will be resting 67. I won't be breathing heavily. It's all in my head. It's all in my head and in my body.
Yeah.
It's because my vagus nerve cannot send the signal, hey, you're fucked.
Yeah.
And so my body, how my body would put me into panic attacks, it replicates my gastroparesis symptoms or my hypoglycemia symptoms.
No shit.
It literally replicates it. And so every time I had a panic attack, I thought I was having a health issue. And like, I'd be like, and it finally got to the point I realized, oh, this is anxiety. And so my fear, I was never afraid of an event in the future besides the anxiety attack. Yeah. And so I was afraid of having a panic attack. Like that was what was causing my anxiety, was the fear of the attack itself. And so when I went into this program, I was like, there's no way they can cure it because I don't have a start. Like I don't have an event that started by anxiety that, to my knowledge, you know, like, cause it just started one day. And, man, I remember, cause they do that question, like, all right, well, how do you get back to that moment? How do you feel? And I was like a 7 or 8. And then at the end, they're like, how do you feel now? And they're like, try to feel it again. And I couldn't even tell you what anxiety felt like. And it bothered me. I was like, this is witchcraft, you know, it's a 0. I was like mad about it that I couldn't like feel anxiety, you know? But then I realized, dude, and now I've sent like a few buddies and one of them already had a session yesterday. And he's like, dude, what just happened? Yeah. You know, like there's a lot of amazing nonprofits doing amazing things. In my opinion, go into like 22-0 should be the first step, and then go to like these outdoor recreational nonprofits to rebuild that community, to refine that purpose. But like mentally help yourself to where you can get back into a good sleep pattern. Cause obviously like if you're not sleeping good, like your body can't heal itself.
Yeah. It's the most precious thing. And a lot of us are experiencing these dual diagnoses, and we tend to shed and not focus on the insomnia. Like I had insomnia, and fun fact, it comes back. Like you deal with on and off. And once you have the tools, you know how to deal with it. But I was never prioritizing sleep, because what's the number one thing that you use as a reward? Hey, you get your work done, priorities of work, get your patrol base in order. Then what? Then maybe you can get some sleep. This is the first thing we jettison. And now understanding that, like, no, fuck that. If I want to be able to function properly, I got to sleep. Like, I got to be able to sleep. That means that, hey, I'm not going to cramp. I'm not going to cramp for this test. I'm not going to sit here and sweat this. No, I'm going to get my 8 hours. And that's the most powerful thing that people don't realize. It's like you do all your recovery when you're sleeping. That's like, hey, shout out to the Oura Ring. That thing, I love the Apple Watch. I love the Whoop strap. They were great. But after you figure out your fitness goals and what you need to do, focus on sleep. And that's the one thing I nerd about now. It's like I look at my ring metrics in the morning, I'm like, oh, and it shows you that deep cycle sleep. And it's like, if it's short, it's like, what am I doing? What's going on?
Yep. Yeah. No, for sure, man. For sure.
Yeah.
We can do hard shit, dude. When I was running yesterday, and I was just thinking to myself, like, I don't know if this is stupid, but I was like, dude, I like recorded myself when I was running. I was like, dude, I am so proud of myself for what everyone said, where they said I live. Like, I was told I'd be basically on a hospital bed in my house, and I will probably finish the month close to 100 miles or damn near close to it, at least. Which dude, that's insane to me. Like, and like just where I am mentally now, like all the things I've been able to do through all the pain, like, dude, I'm nauseous right now. I'm in pain right now. Like, that's not going anywhere. And so I've said this for a long time. This is probably one of the first like mantras I said to myself. I'm going to be in the same pain in bed on the couch as I am if I go walk around a park or I go walk along a river. Why the hell am I going to choose to sit in bed when it's the same damn pain on that mountain? And so, you know, sure, I do a lot of things I probably shouldn't do for a safety standpoint. But man, if I die next week, I showed my family and I showed a lot of people, you do not have to do, you know, like you don't have to follow that shit hand you've been dealt.
Exactly. Like, a diagnosis is not your identity. A diagnosis and it issue that you've been diagnosed with is not who you are. You have the ability to wake up every morning, grab onto some grit and some discipline and go after your dreams and live a life that you deserve, because we were not meant to just survive. Life is not about survival. It is about thriving. And if you've been in the military and were part of GWAT, you're the individual that deserves it more than most. And yeah, I'm a little biased because I love you guys. I think that you've been through so fucking much, just like I have, and just like Cameron has, that now that you're out, now that you're retired, now that you ETS, fuck, you deserve it. Don't let a diagnosis of PTSD, anxiety, depression, or an injury define what you will do in life. Where there's a will, there's a fucking way. Go after it. Don't just settle for a life of quiet desperation. That's for somebody else, not for you. Cameron, thank you so much for being here and fucking giving your time and sharing your story with us. Dude, I can't begin to tell you how inspiring it is to have somebody else sit there and be able to say the same things that I talk about every day. You're going to feel pain. You're going to feel discomfort. Choose that over the comfort.
Yes.
Dude, can't wait to reach back out and have you back on to talk about your next endeavors. What are you working on right now so we can plug it?
Yeah, man. So working on a passion project. So I'm telling the story of a young woman. So she's not a vet, but a young woman who was in back-to-back abusive relationships, like right out of 18, marriages that like physically, emotionally abusive, had a child at 18. And towards the end of the second abusive relationship, she found trail running and it saved her life. And now she's training for this awesome race that's coming up. It's a 12-hour ultra marathon. So you literally, there's no distance. You run to time. Yeah. And so she'll do probably right around 30 miles and about 18,000 feet of elevation gain. And so we're telling her story, and hers, man, is just the same thing. You can do hard things, right? Like you don't have to be a victim. And so I'm working on that, obviously a lot of nonprofit stuff still, but yeah, if you want to watch some of the work I do, my website's wildwood.com, but it's spelled with 2 V's for the first W. It's not ILD, it's VVILD and then a regular wood at the end. But find me there, Cameron Cush on Instagram, and then I'm on LinkedIn. I like LinkedIn a lot. Yeah. Utilize LinkedIn if you're a veteran.
Yes.
Don't sleep on LinkedIn. It's not just a business platform. Jump on LinkedIn.
Oh, hell yeah. I love the shit out of LinkedIn. That's one of the places I like to connect with people. It's good. It's upfront, and there's not a lot of weird TikTok dances. So that's why I enjoy it.
That's very fair. That's very fair.
Cameron, thank you so much for being here, and thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time. Take care. If you like what we're doing and you're enjoying the show, don't forget to share us, like us, subscribe, and head on over to our Patreon where you can be part of our community and get access to all of our episodes as soon as they drop. And remember, we get through this together. Take care.